Hey everyone, welcome to our Journey with Jesus podcast. I'm your host, Tina, and in this podcast, I share testimonies of our journey with Christ and how that has impacted our lives. Today, I'm going to be talking about a recent experience that I had. Um, so, a little bit of backstory, because everything's got to have a bit of a backstory. Uh, Throughout most of my adult life, uh, my family and I have experienced pretty significant poverty and had a lot of struggles and whatnot throughout the years with that. It wasn't until just a few years ago that we started experiencing more financial security. So this is a little bit of a background that pertains to what I'm going to talk about today. So, as most of us are aware, the recent world events has created a sense of insecurity and fear in a lot of people because there's a concern about financial security and access to resources and whatnot. And so I've had a lot of people, kind of bring it up to me in conversation. And I found that my response um, was usually something along the lines of, well, I'm not too worried because I've dealt with hard things in the past, so I know how to do hard. Can we guess where this is going? Um, And then not long after that, we started experiencing some financial difficulties and in openness and transparency. A lot of that was due to my lack of being a good steward of the money that God has blessed us with. And so that started about a month ago. Anyway, at first I wasn't too worried or too concerned because you know I know that God takes care of us and He'll meet our needs. And it's like, okay, just keep it together. And I kept praying and asking for wisdom and forgiveness for my part in it and whatnot. And it just didn't get better. Matter of fact, a couple weeks ago, it got really bad, and it was actually pretty scary. I haven't had that much. We haven't had to deal with the that much financial struggles in a while. And as a matter of fact, I was getting kind of spoiled in a way because one of the things I did on a regular basis was I'd stop in the mornings and get a coffee as a treat to myself. And and all of a sudden that became a hardship. And there was a day I wasn't able to, scrounge up enough change or freebies from my card to get a coffee. And I remember I was sitting in my office thinking, man, my day is ruined because I didn't get that coffee. I really wanted that coffee and I was just craving it. And for some reason, it was just stuck in my head. And it just seemed to represent a lot of the fears I was having. And just, I engaged in a pretty healthy dose of self pity and whatnot. And I was going through the day and I was just worked up over it. And all of a sudden it clicked. I'm whining over coffee. I'm whining over coffee. My We didn't have a lot of food in the house, but we were eating. We had food. We had shelter. I It was coffee, and of course, I started praying. Looking for forgiveness and seeking, to confess to God that yeah, I'm being selfish right now. I'm in a pity party, and I'm really sorry. And then it clicked. My mind suddenly flashed to all the times when people would talk about being scared. My response was, I'm not too worried. I've been through hard things before. I can do hard again. And here I was falling apart over a coffee. And it just was like this huge light bulb. I was like, oh my goodness. I was dealing with pride because it wasn't me who did all the hard things. It was God. He provided for us every time. Sometimes exactly what we needed, and sometimes above and beyond. One of the examples I can think of a time when he provided us with exactly what we needed. We were living in Missouri in a little town called Blue Eye, which is about 45 minutes away from Branson, Missouri. And in Blue Eye, there really wasn't anything. There wasn't stores. There wasn't, so you certainly weren't going to work there. So you had to travel the 45 minutes to work. So a vehicle was pretty important. And the van we had at the time, the transmission went out in it, and somehow we managed to come up with the money to fix that. But then it went out again. And I was beside myself and just could not figure out what to do about this van and how we were going to get to work and to get the kids where they needed to go and all the things that goes with that. And so like I said, I spent the day just trying to figure it out. Now I was still fairly young, and so sometimes I don't always get, to this day, I guess it's still the same. I don't always catch it. I don't always catch what it is that I need to be doing. So by that night, I was done. I was just done. So I prayed. I said, God, I can't do it. I've tried everything. I guess I gotta leave it up to you. I gotta leave it up to you. And which, yeah, he should have been my first call, right? But that's where I was at. So I went to bed that night. The next morning, I got up, went and checked my mail, and there was a letter from the IRS. And of course, I'm like, are you kidding me? I said, I need help. I need I need an answer to this and now this. Because who looks forward to a letter from the IRS? So I opened the letter and it said that there'd been a mistake in my taxes, and my heart just sank. I'm like, I don't even know what's going to happen here. So I kept reading the letter, and it said the mistake was in my favor. So that, in other words, the IRS owed me money, and in with the letter was a check from the IRS. Here's the kicker. It was for the exact amount we needed to fix that transmission. So God always provides for our needs. So fast forward back to the current, the more recent situation. I went home and I confessed to my husband, this experience and this awareness that God had brought to my attention about, my pride and my pity party and all that went with it. And we prayed about it. Well, very quickly after that, God started providing the answers that we needed for our situation, our financial situation. And no, I do want to be very clear that over the last couple of weeks, we have absolutely at no time did we go without. It was just scary because we could. That's what it looked like. We could. So we had to have enough faith to rely on God in that. But I think for me, it was the lesson about pride, because it's not something I really watch for in the little things. Of course, the big things, it's like, oh yeah, okay, don't do that. But and then I guess this wasn't so little, but that little comment that I had made said where my heart was at, and that I was taking from God what was His in that moment, in those moments where instead of saying, yeah, God's gotten me through hard times in the past, He'll get me through hard times in the future, which is usually what I do think, but that one snuck up on me. And so anyway, like I said, God provided some answers to our financial difficulties, and things have turned right side back up, as I said, right? Anyway, and things are more comfortable. And so that started happening last Friday. And so I stopped to get a coffee, and one of my coworkers was ahead of me, and she bought me my coffee, so I didn't have to pay for it that day for Mother's Day, and that was really cool. Then Monday, I go to pull up to get a coffee. It had been paid for. They wouldn't tell me who. I And I respect that. People like to do not kind things. And so I got another for coffee. And then Tuesday, I stopped to get a coffee. And it was another free one. So it just makes me think that about how God provides for our needs. If we're open to what He has for us to learn, and we're open to the transformations and the lessons He has for us, He will bless us, even with some extra coffee. So that was that. That is the most recent experience. So from that, I am determined to be more aware of my attitude, including for things like pride, and also that side note of the self pity. That doesn't also doesn't allow God to do His work when we're sitting in our self pity. So, but mostly today, I'm thinking about the pride aspect, and so I have a couple of verses that I want to share on this topic, and the Bible is full of stuff about pride, and most of these verses are going to be very familiar to a lot of you. So the first one is 1 John 2:15 through 17. Do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For everything in the world, the cravings of sinful man, the lust of his eyes, and the boasting of what he has and does, comes not from the Father, but from the world. The world and its desires pass away, but the man who does the will of God lives forever. So when I found that verse for today's episode, I was like, yeah, that really sums up my experience, both historically and currently. And so I may be posting that one up somewhere where I can see it as a reminder. And of course, you have Proverbs 11:2. When pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with humility comes wisdom. When we humble ourselves before the Lord and in our life, it leaves room for God's wisdom. Is really what I take from that. And reminds me that pride comes before the fall. And then we have James 4:6. But He gives us more grace. That is why the scripture says, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. And man, when we fall under His grace, everything seems to work so much better. So I'm going to leave this episode on that note. Just a reminder, please like and share this episode in this podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, or if you're catching this on YouTube, please like and share there as well. I also have a Facebook page called Our Journey with Jesus Podcast. Let me know if you can't find it. This is a very new podcast, so it's not coming up in searches very well. But you can find the podcast itself on anchor.fm, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. I'm still working on some of the other ones. If you're interested in sharing your testimony, please just shoot me an email at ourjourneypc@gmail.com. I'll leave all the links to all these things in the description of whatever you're listening or watching this podcast on. I would love to get more testimonies going. On that note, thank you for listening, and God bless.